Book nibbles. Big ideas, small bites. Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 is a timeless exploration of censorship, the power of knowledge, and the fragility of human thought in a society dominated by conformity, instant gratification, and the suppression of dissent. The novel opens in a world where books are outlawed, and firemen, like Guy Montag, burn any books they find, ensuring that citizens remain ignorant, distracted, and docile. In this dystopia, critical thinking is discouraged, history is simplified or erased, and emotional depth is replaced with entertainment-driven superficiality. Montag, the protagonist, begins the story as a loyal servant of this oppressive system, taking pride in his work as a fireman, unaware that his life is about to be upended by curiosity, conscience, and the recognition of the emptiness surrounding him. From the outset, Bradbury immerses readers in a society obsessed with speed, distraction, and technological control. Citizens are glued to immersive, wall-sized television screens that dominate their homes, often occupying entire families. People consume trivial media, engage in mindless chatter, and maintain shallow relationships, creating a culture in which intellectual engagement is discouraged and even feared. Montag's own wife, Mildred, embodies this societal norm. She is obsessed with her parlor walls, interactive screens that project continuous entertainment, and she regularly overdoses on sleeping pills, a subtle critique of a society that numbs its citizens to reality. Through Mildred, Bradbury illustrates the human cost of complacency and superficiality, showing how comfort and distraction can mask emotional emptiness, prevent meaningful relationships, and erode individuality. Montag's transformation begins with encounters that awaken curiosity and doubt. One key figure is Clarice McClellan, a young, inquisitive neighbor whose curiosity, sensitivity, and questioning of the world intrigue Montag. Clarice asks seemingly simple yet profound questions. Are you happy? Forcing Montag to reflect on his own life, his work, and his emotional numbness. Her free-spirited nature contrasts sharply with the conformist society around them, and she represents the possibility of thought, reflection, and emotional connection. Through Clarice, Bradbury conveys the idea that small acts of awareness and genuine human curiosity can ignite self-examination and rebellion against oppressive norms. Montag is captivated not only by Clarice's questions, but by her ability to experience the world fully, noticing nature, engaging in dialogue, and valuing authentic experience over mindless consumption. Her disappearance later in the story is a pivotal moment, illustrating the societal forces that suppress individuality and free thought, and catalyzing Montag's eventual rebellion. Another crucial turning point in Montag's journey is witnessing a woman choose to die with her books rather than surrender them to the firemen. This event shocks Montag, leaving a lasting impression of the value people place on knowledge and ideas, and contrasting sharply with the superficiality surrounding him. It serves as a moral awakening, highlighting the intrinsic human need for intellectual freedom and the courage required to defend it. Bradbury uses this moment to explore themes of mortality, sacrifice, and the moral implications of censorship. Montag begins to question the purpose of his work, the justification for destroying knowledge, and the consequences of living in a society that prioritizes comfort and obedience over truth and thought. Montag's internal struggle deepens as he becomes increasingly dissatisfied with his life and the society he serves. He experiences cognitive dissonance, the conflict between his identity as a fireman and the awakening recognition of the injustices around him. His professional duties, which once brought pride, now feel hollow and morally reprehensible. He begins secretly collecting books, hiding them in his home, and experimenting with reading, acts of quiet defiance that put him at risk. These clandestine activities underscore a central theme of the novel: the tension between conformity and individuality, between fear and curiosity, and between oppressive societal norms and the human impulse to seek understanding. Bradbury demonstrates how intellectual rebellion often begins with small acts of defiance, quiet questions, and private reflection before escalating into overt challenges to authority. Montag's relationship with Captain Beatty, his fire chief, further illuminates the novel's exploration of knowledge and power. Beatty is articulate, cultured, and deeply paradoxical. He understands literature and the history of ideas, but uses that knowledge to justify censorship and the destruction of books. Beatty represents the danger of intellectual corruption and moral compromise. He argues that books are dangerous because they promote conflicting ideas, cause dissatisfaction, and undermine social stability. Through Beatty, Bradbury presents a critique of authoritarian reasoning masked as benevolence, showing how knowledge can be weaponized to maintain control rather than empower individuals. Beatty's interactions with Montag are both provocative and manipulative, designed to test Montag's loyalty and push him toward conformity. This psychological tension becomes a crucible in which Montag's character is tested, forcing him to confront the ethical and emotional consequences of his choices. Montag's awakening is reinforced by his growing engagement with Faber, a retired English professor who becomes a mentor and co-conspirator. Faber represents the intellectual counterpoint to the oppressive world Montag inhabits. He understands literature, philosophy, and the moral necessity of ideas for a healthy society. Faber explains the importance of books, not merely as objects, but as repositories of knowledge, context, and critical thinking. He helps Montag recognize that literature preserves diverse perspectives, encourages reflective thought, and connects humans across time and experience. Their collaboration exemplifies the mentor-student dynamic, illustrating how guidance, encouragement, and intellectual companionship can nurture courage, critical awareness, and resistance to social conformity. Through Faber, Bradbury emphasizes the transformative power of education, dialogue, and shared intellectual pursuit in resisting societal repression. A key aspect of Montag's rebellion is the use of strategy and technology. With Faber's guidance, Montag devises a plan to preserve and disseminate knowledge, highlighting the interplay between cunning, courage, and moral purpose. They create methods to evade detection, including hiding books in inconspicuous locations and using covert communication. Bradbury underscores that resistance to oppression often requires both intellectual acuity and practical ingenuity, showing that ethical action in hostile environments demands creativity, discipline, and perseverance. Montag's journey from passive participant to active rebel exemplifies the process by which individuals confront authoritarian control, emphasizing the moral, intellectual, and emotional dimensions of defiance. As Montag's awareness grows, so too does the danger he faces. Captain Beatty, perceptive and manipulative, eventually confronts Montag, threatening to expose his rebellion. This confrontation escalates into a climactic sequence in which Montag, in self-defense and driven by moral conviction, kills Beatty to preserve his life and his newfound understanding. The act represents both liberation and profound ethical ambiguity. Montag is free from immediate control, but he has crossed a threshold from which there is no return. Bradbury uses this moment to explore the complexities of rebellion, the costs of moral courage, and the ways in which ethical action can carry unintended consequences. Montag's choice is not glorified. It is fraught with tension, guilt, and the recognition that personal freedom often demands sacrifice. After fleeing the city, Montag encounters a group of intellectual outcasts who have committed themselves to preserving knowledge through memorization and oral tradition. Each member of the group has taken responsibility for a specific text, embodying the role of living books. This community symbolizes hope, resilience, and the potential for cultural renewal even in the face of systemic destruction. Bradbury highlights the adaptive strategies of marginalized knowledge. Memory, collaboration, and oral transmission become tools of resistance. Montag's integration into this community represents the culmination of his transformation, from a passive enforcer of censorship to an active participant in the preservation and dissemination of knowledge. The novel emphasizes that knowledge, once valued and internalized, can survive beyond physical destruction and oppressive authority. The narrative also explores the destructive power of technology and state control. Bradbury portrays a society in which mass media, superficial entertainment, and constant surveillance suppress individuality and critical thought. Citizens are numbed by interactive television, trivialized news, and omnipresent distraction, leaving them incapable of reflective thought or moral judgment. The novel critiques the substitution of passive consumption for active engagement, showing how convenience and pleasure can become tools of oppression. Montag's Awakening illustrates the human potential to reclaim agency and consciousness, highlighting the ethical imperative to question authority, resist indoctrination, and seek authentic understanding. Throughout Fahrenheit 451, Bradbury employs rich symbolism to reinforce the novel's themes. Fire, for example, operates as a dual symbol. Initially representing destruction, censorship, and oppression, it later comes to signify warmth, renewal, and the potential for enlightenment when knowledge is wielded responsibly. The phoenix metaphor, invoked toward the novel's conclusion, underscores the cyclical nature of civilization. Societies may destroy themselves, but hope, knowledge, and human ingenuity allow for regeneration. Books, meanwhile, symbolize the complexity of human thought, the preservation of culture, and the moral responsibility to remember and learn from the past. Bradbury's use of symbolism enriches the narrative, creating layers of meaning that extend beyond the immediate plot into broader social, ethical, and philosophical questions. Bradbury also explores the psychological impact of isolation, alienation, and conformity. Montag's personal journey reveals the dangers of emotional numbness and societal pressure to suppress individuality. His relationship with Mildred deteriorates as he becomes increasingly alienated from her shallow worldview and obsession with screens. This estrangement highlights the personal cost of intellectual awakening in a society that discourages reflection and authentic connection. Bradbury suggests that the cultivation of meaningful relationships, rooted in empathy, dialogue, and shared understanding, is inseparable from the pursuit of knowledge and freedom. Montag's emotional evolution parallels his intellectual transformation, illustrating the interconnectedness of thought, feeling, and moral development. The novel's climax coincides with the city's destruction by nuclear war, a stark depiction of societal collapse brought about by ignorance, aggression, and moral decay. Montag and the community of intellectuals survive, symbolizing the resilience of knowledge and human potential. Bradbury juxtaposes destruction with the possibility of renewal, suggesting that the preservation of ideas, critical thinking, and human consciousness can provide the foundation for rebuilding civilization. Montag's survival is not merely physical. It represents the triumph of curiosity, conscience, and moral courage over conformity, oppression, and violence. Bradbury's prose throughout Fahrenheit 451 reinforces the novel's urgency and intensity. His use of vivid imagery, metaphor, and lyrical description immerses readers in both the oppressive environment and the protagonist's inner transformation. Readers experience the heat of the fire, the numbing effect of screens, and the exhilaration of discovery alongside Montag. This immersive style enhances the moral and philosophical impact of the story, making the reader complicit in Montag's awakening and empathetic to the stakes of the dystopian world. Bradbury's language mirrors the novel's central themes: tension between knowledge and ignorance, individuality and conformity, destruction and renewal. The book also serves as a cautionary tale, warning against the uncritical embrace of technology, state control, and mass media. Bradbury illustrates how societies may prioritize comfort, entertainment, and homogeneity at the expense of critical thinking, historical awareness, and moral responsibility. Montag's journey is a case study in the dangers of complacency and the transformative power of questioning, reading, and thinking independently. The novel urges readers to reflect on their own engagement with information, culture, and authority, emphasizing that intellectual freedom is both fragile and essential. Bradbury's vision extends beyond censorship and technology into ethical and existential questions. Montag's moral awakening forces him to confront the responsibilities of knowledge, how to act, whom to trust, and what risks are justified in the pursuit of truth. These dilemmas highlight the complexity of ethical action in oppressive contexts. Bradbury does not offer simplistic solutions. Instead, he presents the protagonist's evolution as an ongoing struggle, underscoring the nuanced interplay between knowledge, courage, and responsibility. Readers are invited to consider how they might respond when faced with injustice, ignorance, or moral compromise, and how individual action can influence broader societal outcomes. The novel concludes with a vision of hope and reconstruction. Montag and the community of intellectuals set out to rebuild society, carrying books and knowledge into the future. Bradbury emphasizes the enduring value of memory, learning, and critical thought as tools for survival and progress. While the city's destruction is catastrophic, the preservation of human knowledge ensures the possibility of renewal, suggesting that wisdom, courage, and collaboration can counteract the forces of oppression and ignorance. The ending is both realistic and optimistic. It acknowledges the destructive potential of human societies while affirming the power of ideas, moral action, and resilience to create a better future. In Fahrenheit 451, Bradbury delivers a narrative that is both a gripping story and a profound meditation on the value of literature, the dangers of conformity, and the ethical responsibilities of citizens in a democratic society. Through Montag's transformation, from a complacent fireman to a thoughtful, morally conscious rebel, readers witness the evolution of human consciousness under duress. The novel's detailed depiction of oppression, personal awakening, and intellectual resistance provides both inspiration and warning. Freedom of thought must be actively defended, curiosity must be nurtured, and engagement with knowledge is a moral imperative. Bradbury's work transcends its immediate historical context, offering lessons that remain strikingly relevant in contemporary discussions of censorship, media influence, and the preservation of culture. Ultimately, Fahrenheit 451 is a call to vigilance, reflection, and action. Bradbury illustrates that societies that suppress knowledge, discourage questioning, and prioritize comfort over understanding risk not only cultural stagnation, but existential collapse. Montag's journey demonstrates the transformative power of curiosity, the moral necessity of knowledge, and the resilience of the human spirit. The novel challenges readers to consider their own relationships with information, authority, and culture, offering both a cautionary tale and a blueprint for intellectual and ethical awakening. Through its vivid characters, symbolic imagery, and unflinching critique of oppression, Fahrenheit 451 remains a compelling testament to the enduring value of literature, freedom, and the courage to think independently. And that's it. Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. Thanks for listening to Book Nibbles. If you enjoyed this bite-sized book, don't forget to subscribe for more quick, insightful summaries. See you in the next nibble.